The 4 most valuable lessons from traveling Dubai and the Maldives at 19 years old. I'm sat on my private beach. The weather is at the perfect temperature. You know, that temperature when you don't really think about if it's too hot or cold. You just kind of enjoy the feeling of the sun gently hugging your skin. I'm in the Maldives after having been in Dubai the 10 days prior, having now moved there for the next few years. And I look like the stereotypical digital nomad, influencer, guru, quick fix car salesman. The way I'm bragging, I'm acting like one, too. Lesson 1. Take everything you see online with a pinch of salt. The reason I'm here is because I've been sleeping 3 hours a night, working on a commercial shoot as a lighting assistant for the last 2 weeks for the hotel this place belongs to. Earning great money, but nowhere near enough to be able to afford somewhere like this. Oh, and by the way, I'm sharing this room before moving to the staff bunk beds for the final night, as this place was booked up. But it isn't convenient for me to show you that, is it? I've moved to Dubai, which, when marketed in a successful manner online, can be the hallmark of having made it in life. No more worries for the rest of your days, an infinite supply of cash, and so much clunge you can barely move. In reality, I've once again, following my move at 18 to London, bankrupted myself to set in motion major change in my life in lieu of my constant pursuit of progression. Whilst that does set up for an exciting story, it doesn't make for content that I can easily brag and impress people with. Anyway, enough with the personal anecdotes, let's get to the point. Moving to Dubai and the brief stay I've had so far in the Maldives has reminded me of the trite but profound point that Instagram isn't reality. That's a lie. We have our heads buried in our screens so much that it's become our reality. But it doesn't reflect the world that really exists when we use our eyes to look up from refreshing our timelines. I work in the media world, and forgive my generalizations here, but I know the following. Your favorite influencers, especially in places like Dubai and LA and the Maldives and Bali, rent designer clothes for shoots, rent their cars, smile for the footage you see uploaded, but not for the waiter delivering them their dinner. They do barter deals with hotels like this so they can stay for free in return for promotional content. They pay for followers and likes. They get bummed by royalty for quick cash. They have rich parents, and a lot of them work really hard to blow up. It takes 10 years to create an overnight success. Give yourself a break. Their metrics of success look different to ours. Their locations of work are probably, in all fairness, more exciting than a 9-to-5 office, like I'm very fortunate to say mine are. But does this mean what YouTubers do or what I do is any more inherently valuable than an electrician working in Rotherham? I'd actually argue that the inverse is probably true much of the time. And it's a tough pill for me to swallow as someone who wants to be in this world of YouTube and podcasting, and it keeps me in check. It forces me to try to create shit that's valuable rather than shit that should be flushed down the toilet. I also find it fascinating how we pursue things that give us such luxury connotations that really, when broken down, aren't. If you want to take pictures of your feet on a sunbed with palm trees in the background, drinking out of a coconut, move to East Asia, where if you're from the West, you'll probably be able to live like a monarch by our digital standards and do all of these things, regardless of what job you have at the moment. Marketability does not equate to value. Not all cultures are the same, and what you're dreaming of having may already be available to you if you'd moved to another country. My money hasn't gone up since moving, but my standard of life has, which is counterintuitive to what we observe, so we assume people with a better lifestyle than us must be earning more and that it's out of our reach. In some places, it's near impossible to feel like a success, even if you're crushing it. Like the cold, miserable UK that I've just moved from, where to have your own maid, for example, you'd most likely be living in the Saltburn mansion, snorting coke and partying every weekend. But in the UAE, where I now live, it's commonplace, and more often than not, houses come with a dedicated maid's room. Choose your job carefully because the competence to reward ratio is unequal across sectors. Choose where you live carefully if you can, because the standard of living to social status ratio isn't equal across continents. But also, don't just choose the job because it will fulfill your desire to impress others. Choose it because what would be described as work by others feel like play to you. The consumerist cycle. Comparison is the mother of clarity, and everything is best understood by using the tool of comparison. Traveling makes you realize that things you take for granted are not the way things are done in a majority of other places in the world. The ecosystem we currently inhabit in the West is one in which we're all treated as customers rather than people. Train announcements have gone from saying passengers to customers on their PA announcements. Fragmentation of media means targeting for specific audiences rather than putting out the correct information available. And whilst we regress into a society held together more and more by the mutual use of each other as customers rather than fellow friends, we're simultaneously being turned into products as well. The commodification of OnlyFans girls is a hotly contested topic. To me, it shows the lengths we're willing to go to thrive in the current climate, objectifying and degrading ourselves to please our fellow customers. Also, heads up, if you're not paying for a product, you are the product. To break all of this down in a digestible way, the current state of play revolves around two key assumptions we all make, as said by Abbot Christopher Jamison. 1. The assumption that there's an infinite supply of goods coming from an infinite production line. 2. The consumer will have to engage in endless productive work in order to earn the money to fund the endless consumption. I see this best portrayed driving around Dubai, where I see a literal endless supply of poor Indian and Pakistani Uber Eats and Deliveroo drivers wearing their full work outfits with jackets, baking in the sun, delivering someone's bottle of water 11 kilometers away because they couldn't be asked or were too busy working to walk to the edge of their apartment complex where there's a supermarket. The consumer then has to work relentlessly all week, as Dubaians are notorious for doing, to be able to earn the money to fund their endless consumption, keeping them trapped in a loop. By the way, I have no idea if Dubaians is an actual phrase, but I'm coining it. That's so shit. This demand is also met by a supply of more and more drivers, leading to the roads of Dubai looking like a Deliveroo ride-out, with 40% of the population out on a local pussy patrol together, driving out in their fluorescent jackets. Faithful with a little, faithful with a lot. I told myself I'd be a certain way when I moved into my own flat for the first time. I told myself I'd be a certain way when I moved abroad for the first time. I told myself I'd work harder when the stakes were raised, but they never were, because they were always dictated by me. We give ourselves the psychological comfort of saying that we're in an inadequate position to operate 100% effectively until said needs are met. The reality is that at heart, I'm a manifestation of every gym session I completed at 1 a.m. when I really should have gone to bed. The edits I completed at 4 a.m. because I'd been filming all day since sunrise. The times I said no to parties to do what was uncool but necessary. But I'm also the sum of the times I've been selfish and worried about my own interests rather than others. I'm the sum of the times I convinced myself I could eat more shit using some wild mental gymnastics to justify loading up on a kgs worth of pick and mix sweets. Every foot you place in front of the other dictates the very experience of life and the world that you are going to have. The habits you accrue get deeply embedded in your own nature of being, to the point where unlearning them becomes very difficult to do. If you think that things will suddenly change if you do X, picture X happening to you today, and if that really would change anything, let alone everything. Environment is a powerful thing, and it can change you over time for the better, but if you just expect to immediately become what you always dreamt of being in the small moments day by day by jumping on a plane elsewhere, you're deluded. I'm happy that I've dedicated so much time to trying to move my feet in the direction of a moral and meaningful life, not to get too philosophical, before moving to a place like Dubai. But there is a lot of work to be done, and I do fear being swept into the city's vacuous culture if I get complacent. So, to summarize, the shitty rushed 35-minute workout you do after school before going to a family dinner is the litmus test for how you will attack other, much bigger rushed challenges in the future when you're given the option, or at least an excuse, to not do your best. The way you speak to a waiter that has no power in telling you how to behave and act is the litmus test for how many people you'll be happy with fucking over because it was expedient to do so. Every time something seems banal, it is exactly when the true test as a person kicks in. It's easy to do the best when you're held at gunpoint, but that's not the nature of our everyday lives. We are living through a time incorporating beliefs into every part of our lives that will one day be looked at as primitive. I never cease to be amazed by the capacity we have in us as humans, if unleashed. Driving past the Burj Khalifa, filming in the longest infinity pool in the world, using a toilet that sprays water up my ass. We're living through amazing times. Living in a place that is desperate to be at the heart of innovation in the world really gives you a different attitude towards being creative. In the UK, if you spoke about your ambitions the way Emiratis or Americans do, people would call you a cocky tosser. Whereas here, the sky is barely the limit. With this comes another realization to me. With all the development we've seen the past 30 years, with historian Dan Jones describing it as on par with the Industrial Revolution, if not more impactful on the world, the logical conclusion is that just like we look back on the Victorians and laugh at some of the odd things they did, one day in the not too distant future, we're going to have people doing the same to us. The game of life is to figure out what that cracked belief will be and go against the grain in disposing of it. I haven't thought in much depth about this, but something I wonder is what the perfect balance of amazement of humans compared to awareness that we're stupid is. I think there's a time and place for both of these states of thought, and maybe stupidity is a phrase too harsh to throw around, but I certainly think we're being held back massively in many ways now due to incompetence and false beliefs that either are comforting to us or that on a subconscious level we're too scared to even confront. If I was to make a prediction, I think certain organised religions will crumble and leave former worshippers distraught that they could be tricked into following such things. I think the way we view what a human is will change greatly, and I'd predict that a greater historical and scientific understanding of how we always react to certain stimuli as a species will lead us to being less surprised when things don't go our way, and will also mean we start preventing things at the root cause, like depression, for example, rather than giving meds to someone already suffering. So, some light at the end of the tunnel. Anyways, some very brief and messy thoughts thrown together from my travels because I wanted to show off this place and pretend to be humble in the process. Now, fuck off. I'm going for an evening swim.